was better than everything that's done. He said, what are those three things? He said, the first thing is in the battle of Tabuk. Rasulullah looks to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says, what? Anta minni al-Harun al-Musa. Right? You are to me like Harun was to Musa. And he says, what a beautiful way of praising Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, what was the second? He says, in the battle of Khaybar, when everybody wanted that alam, right? Everybody was fighting, everybody was wanting that alam to go fight. When Rasulullah stands up and says, what? That I'm going to give this alam to who? To someone who is farar, to later farar. Someone who will never run away from the battle. I'm going to give this alam to someone who loves me and Allah, and who I and Allah love. And he said, what a great azmat, what a great fazail. He said, everybody wanted, but Ali got that. And he said the third was in Mubahila when Jibreel came down and told Allah and gave the message of Allah that, O Prophet, take your nafs. And everybody around him said, who is going to be the nafs of Rasul? And he said, that fazail also in trial. He said, even if I got one of those fazilat, that would have been better for me than everything that is in this world. He said, because of this, I will never curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. So you see this person, he goes kind of, wherever the wind blows, he kind of blows with it. But when I look at his son, and I see, his aqidah, and once again, the history books doesn't have a lot from him, but there is something that we can get from, when he was growing up. And one of the things we have to realize is, how old do you think Umar ibn Saad was on the day of Ashura? Anyone? 50s, 40s. He was in his late 30s, right? He was pretty young when you think about it. Even when you think about those three people that were responsible for Ashura, you look at Yazid. Yazid was also in his 30s. You look at Ziyad was actually in his early 30s. So these people were relatively young. We think in ourselves when we're thinking about Karbala, we think that these people were old, nearing their death. But no, these people were in their youth. And the reason I say that is because there's a poem that an Arab poet has said that is regarding this, where he said, "Inna shabab wal faragi wal jidda mukassata lil mar'i ay mufassil." He said, look, there are three things in life that can corrupt your soul, that can actually take you to Jannah. And those three things are what? He says the first thing is al-farag, which is free time. When I think about free time, this is something we all pray, right? We want free time, we want to do something. Now, if you have free time, you can do good with it, or it can corrupt your soul. Because nowadays, mashallah, with summer and all of our kids are at home, they have nothing to do, they're getting bored, so they have their phones or their iPads in their hands, and they're just going through the, doom scrolling on Instagram, or they're watching YouTube videos, and mashallah, the algorithm, the related, mashallah, you take them from a Noah to Lord knows what else. They're at the end of it. After hours and hours of watching videos. Right? We have to make sure, first of all, that our children are looking at the right thing. We're not just giving them the phone and trusting them that they're, watching what they're supposed to watch. So you have this thing where the hadith says that if you have free time, it can either, take you to Jahannam, or if you can use it well, it can take you. The second thing is wealth. If you have wealth, that wealth can either take you to Jannah, or it can take you to Jahannam. And the third thing he says is youth, right? Your shabab. He says your youth, if you use it well, you can end up like Ali ibn Akbar. And if you use it not well, then you can end up like Umar ibn Saad. So take advantage of these, especially when you're into the hadith from Rasul, where he says, be careful of your health before your sickness. Be careful of your youth before you grow old. This youth is never coming back, right? Make sure when you're there, you use it properly. When Ibn Ziyad comes to Umar ibn Saad, and this is the interesting part of the story, is when he comes to Umar ibn Saad and he says, look, so Umar ibn Saad had this letter from Yazid that had promised him the kingdom of Ray. We've all heard this in Majlis, right? Ray is like the modern day Iran area. It's a region, it's not a city, it's a pretty big region. So he had this promise from Yazid, he had it in writing. If this Ziyad comes to Umar ibn Saad and says, look, I know you're going to Ray, but do me a favor, go to Karbala and stop Abu Abdullah and take care of Hussein. And at that point he didn't say that I want to kill Hussein, I just go take care of him, see what he's up to. Umar ibn Saad, the first time he says, you want me to go stop the grandson of Rasulullah? No, not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. He says, you know this rate that is given to you? If you don't go, you're never going there. Even at that point, he says, okay, let me think about it. And ulama have said at this one point, they've asked this question about why we sin. Right? When we commit a sin, right? If we're in our state of mind, if it's a clear state of mind, why is it that we sin? The first thing that our ulama have said that the reason we commit sin is whenever we're committing the sin, we think of it as a smaller sin. We think, I'm just listening to music, right? Look at the people who are drinking alcohol. At least I'm not doing that. Amir al-Mu'mineen has this saying that don't think of a sin based on its size. Think of the sin, think of the person, or think of the being you're committing that sin against. So think about that when you're committing sin. So he says, the ulama says that there's three things. One is when I commit a sin, I think of that sin as really small. Right? I'm doing this small sin, there are way bigger sins than this. The second thing is I compare. I basically say, look, I am only doing ghibah. Look at that person, look at my neighbor, look at my brother, look at my cousin, look at this community member, look at the big sins that they're doing now. Right? Look at them, I'm only doing this little sin. The third thing is what Umar ibn Sa'd said. What did Umar ibn Sa'd do? He went home and he started thinking, should I go and should I stop Hussein? What should I do? I know that if I go to Hussein, and he has this poem, and if you have time, I don't have the time to read this entire poem, but this guy, he used to write a lot of poetry for some reason. So he writes his poetry and he says, look, I see Hussein and I know Hussein is on the up. And I know if I do something to Hussein, I may end up in Jahannam. But then he says, look, who's seen Jannah? I haven't seen Jannah. He says, but I've seen this kingdom. I have this writing that I have from Ray. This is on paper. I can see it. So he says, I can just ask for forgiveness. And that's the third reason why we commit sin. Because why we commit the sin, and we're like, look, I'm committing the sin, but I'll just ask for forgiveness. That's okay. Right? What happens is the reason, and sometimes we think like, yeah, I'm committing a small sin. I'm not going to go stop the grandson of Rasulullah. Umar ibn Sa'd didn't think he was going to kill Hussein. He thought he was going to go stop him. What happens is when you commit these smaller sins, and that sin doesn't bring you regret, then that sin, that small sin, adds up to bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, you're up against Imam Hussein with a sword in your hand. So Umar ibn Sa'd at that point, he said, look, I'm just going to ask for forgiveness. It's okay. So he goes back the next morning, he goes to Ibn Ziyad, he said, look, I'm going to do it, it's fine, let me know. The riwayah says he goes to Kufa and he meets some of his friends, and his friends ask him, he's like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to, this area to stop Hussein. Friends are like, are you out of your mind? This is the grandson of Rasulullah. What are you doing? Inshallah, we all have friends like this that actually stop us from committing these sins. So he said, no, you know what? You're right. What am I doing? This is bad. He goes back to Ibn Ziyad and he says, Ibn Ziyad, forget it. The deal's off. I don't want it. This isn't anything. Ibn Ziyad says, give me that paper that you have where I promised you, right? He says he takes the paper, he adds more to it. He's like, here you go. He's like, no, it's okay. Then he said, okay, give me the paper, and I'm going to rip this up, and I'm going to give it to somebody else. And now he feels that materialistic thing going away from him. And at that point, he's like, wait. You're going to give it to somebody else? Like, this thing is gone that I had? See, sometimes when I ask this question about, if I gave you $1 million, would you leave the Imam of your time? Right? I'm 100% sure everybody says no, never. कभी नहीं ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि कोई भी अमाउंट के लिए इमाम को छोड़ सके. But when that money is in front of you, when someone opens a briefcase of $1 million and says, look at this hard cash, right? Because believe it or not, we've cheated our Mormon brothers for a lot less. We've unfortunately sold our clock for a lot less than $1 million. So if I see $1 million in cash, this is not just us. We hear this thing about why did Kufans leave Hussein? No, but they were offered hard money for Ibn Ziyad, right? Thousands of dollars in our, if I convert it. When you give it that sort of money in your hand, it's hard to stick to your aqaid. So Ibn Ziyad, or Umar ibn Sa'd, when he sees that paper go away from him, now he's like, you know what? I need this. I need Ray. I want it. I'm going to take it. So he takes it, he's like, look, fine, I'm going to go. I'm going to go see what's going on. His niyat, in the history book that it says, he never wanted to kill Hussein. His niyat was, I'm going to go, I'm going to convince Hussein to just do this bayah, just let it go, and just go home. When he gets to Karbala, the Riwayah says that from the 3rd of Muharram, when he arrives in Karbala, to the 10th, to the morning of the 10th, he and Abu Abdullah are sitting and they are talking. Right? Even today, when you go to Karbala, there's a place where Umar ibn Saad and Imam Hussein met and discussed all this. There's a place, there's a ziyarah that you can go and visit. In this place, Umar ibn Saad is like, saying, just let it go. Just do bay'ah. Abdullah says no. But he says, look, I'll go home if you want me to go home. And he's like, okay, that sounds good. So he writes a letter to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad gets this letter. He's like, no, I want a bay'ah from Hussein or I want his head. He gets the letter back. Umar ibn Saad is like, Hussein, please, just let it go. Just, let me have my kingdom. I want Ray, and I don't want to kill you, so let's just work together. And Abdullah says, no, either you let me go home. I don't want to fight. I don't want to shed blood. I can go back home. I can go to Kufa, but I'm not going to do bay'ah. And then on the last day, on the last way, he was trying to avoid this because you know what he wanted to do? He wanted Hussein and he wanted this dunya. That's very similar to myself. I want Hussein. I love Hussein, but sometimes I'm not willing to let go of this dunya. Right? I'm not willing to let go of the sins that this dunya wants. I want to do the sins. I want to listen to the music. I want to do the bidah. I want to do all of these sins, but I also want to be Abab. I want to be, with Abab. Umar ibn Saad, unfortunately, it's the same way. He wanted Hussein. He didn't want to kill Hussein, but he also didn't want to let go of his dunya. So it's a lesson for us, to sometimes think about that. What would happen when it comes for me to choose somebody? Who am I going to choose? Because what happens is this: Umar ibn Saad writes a letter to Ibn Ziyad and says, "Look, let Hussein go to Yazid. Let Yazid and Hussein work it out. This isn't worth it, and let me go have my kingdom." That letter is brought to him by Shimr. Shimr goes to Ibn Ziyad and says, "Look, Umar ibn Saad is not going to kill Hussein. It's not going to happen. So either you be strict with him or you make me the leader so I can go kill Hussein." Ibn Ziyad writes a letter back to Umar ibn Saad and says, "Look, stop messing around." I'm paraphrasing. "Stop messing around. Either I want the head of Hussein or I want his bay'ah. And if you can't give me that, then the leader is the person that holds this letter, and the person that held that letter was Shimr." So now Umar ibn Saad is like, okay, now I gotta choose. I gotta choose this dunya, or I gotta choose not killing Hussein. Right? He really wanted to not kill Abu Abdullah. So at the very last moment, I don't want to do this entire story, but on the last day, Abu Abdullah asked him, and he says, "Umar ibn Saad, are you really gonna kill me?" And Umar ibn Saad is like, "Hussein, if I don't, and if I join you, then my house that's in Kufa, they're going to attack my house." Abu Abdullah says, "I'll give you a better house." He says, "Well, what about the land that's offered to you?" Hussein says, "I'll give you a much bigger land." Then he says, "Well, my family, I got to look out for my family." And he says, "I give you my guarantee that your family is safe." But sometimes what happens, and this is sometimes, inshallah, we don't see it within ourselves, but when we're trying to commit these sins, inside of us, we're making these excuses. It's okay. Chota sa gunah, it's okay. Umar ibn Saad at that point is just giving excuses. And he at that point says, "You know what, I have to do it. I need this land." So then you all know the famous story where Abu Abdullah says, if you don't give me an option, then it is the sword. Umar ibn Saad at that point picks up a bow and arrow, shoots the arrow, and says, "Ishhad, be witness that I was the one that shot the first arrow." And that led him to what? Millions of years there's going to be la'na on that person. Because of one decision that he made to do what? I want this land. I want land. I want money. That was the one thing. That was the only thing. He didn't want to kill Hussein. But the only thing was what? I just don't want to let go of this land. What happened to Umar ibn Saad? Because at that point, Abu Abdullah said something to him. And he said at the end, he said, "Look, you're not going to taste a single wheat from bread." And wheat at that point was something that elitists used to eat. And he mocked Hussein at that point. And he said, if it's not wheat, I'll eat the barley. So he was trying to make fun of him. Hussein said, if I don't eat wheat, then it's okay. I'll eat the barley. The history books that I was reading, it said that when after Karbala, after Ashur, and you all know the story, Umar ibn Saad was in a hurry to get back because he just wanted his kingdom. He goes to Ibn Ziyad, and Ibn Ziyad's like, you know that letter I sent you that said that I want you to kill Hussein? Where's that letter? And Umar Saad's like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I want that letter. Can you give that letter back to me? So he understood what Ibn Ziyad was trying to do, was that after they killed Hussein, everybody was finger pointing. How dare you kill the grandson of Rasulullah? So Ibn Ziyad was trying to finger point at Umar ibn Saad. Umar ibn Saad's like, I don't know what letter you're talking about. And he's like, no, give me that letter. And Umar ibn Saad's like, what letter? And he says, that letter that I sent you. And then Umar ibn Saad, the Riwayah in the books, it said that letter is in Makkah where even the old women of Quraysh can read on who ordered this, or who ordered this killing. At that point, Umar ibn Saad's like, or Ibn Ziyad like, Umar ibn Saad, get out of my face. He never got to see that way. As soon as Karbala happened, this whole thing that he killed Imam Hussein for, he never got it. This is the thing, when dunya gives us this mirage of this world, this dollars, this money, all of this, 99% of the time, we never get it. We keep chasing this dunya until we go 6 feet under and under. And that's what it is. That's what Umar ibn Saad, the Riwayah says that when he used to go into masjids, people used to be so disgusted by him that they used to get up and leave. Children used to throw stones at him because of what he did. And then he said that I couldn't even sleep in my bed because there were people outside my door wailing on Hussein. And then the Riwayah says when Mukhtar was trying to go kill the enemies of Hussein, they came and they said that he got word that people from Mukhtar were coming trying to kill me. So he went on his camel and he tried to escape. People came to Mukhtar and said, look, Umar ibn Saad went and he tried to escape. He said, Mukhtar says, don't worry, because the dua of Hussein is wearing that dua on his heart. Aba Abdullah, when Ali al-Akbar was martyred, he raised his hands and he said a dua where he said, Ya Allah, may someone stab this person in his own bed. So Mukhtar says, don't worry, let him escape, he'll come back. And then the history books say that he got on his camel, the camel went around and came back to his house. And he was like, I don't know what's going on. He went inside into his own bed, he was stabbed by the army of Mukhtar in his own bed, and also his son. This is the end of this person. This person who could have chosen Hussein. He could have chosen him. Hussein at the very end was trying to say, Muhammad, stop it, don't do this. What are you trying to do? But because of this love of dunya that was in his heart, he chose this way. And this is what, brothers and sisters, we have to understand. A lesson that we take from him is that, unfortunately, and I'll talk about myself and not any of you, but I'm very close to Umar ibn Saad, where I love Hussein. I love the Ahlul Bayt. I don't know if I'm a Shia. I'm not a Shia. Right? Maytham al-Ammar is a Shia. Salman is a Shia. Abu Dhar is a Shia. But I can just call myself a lover of Hussein. But if I'm a lover of Hussein, and if I'm also a lover of this dunya, if I also love this dunya, and when it comes to push, when push comes to shove, who am I going to choose? And that's the question we all have to ask ourselves, is who are we going to choose? Because when you choose Hussein, you get Jannah. And when you choose this dunya, you get the fate of Umar ibn Saad. You know, when the head comes to Imam al-Sajjad, we have these riwayahs that Imam al-Sajjad smiled. But when I was reading them, Abbas said, I thought to myself, that what did Imam al-Sajjad say? I thought to myself, what did Imam Sajjad think when he saw the head of Umar ibn Saad? And my mind and my heart said, کہ میرے مولا نے سوچا ہوگا کہ یہ وہ شخص ہے جس نے وہ حکم دیا تھا کہ سکینہ کو پانی مت دینا. Seventh of Muharram was Umar ibn Saad that gave the order. یہ وہ شخص ہے جس نے حسین بن نویر کو کہا تھا کہ جاؤ اکبر کے سینے پر نظام ہو. اور شاید سوچا ہوگا کہ یہ وہ شخص ہے کہ جس نے حرملہ کو حکم دیا تھا کہ ایک کا کلام نہیں حسین کہ جاؤ اصغر کے گلے میں. میں نے سوچا ہوگا کہ مولا نے یہ شاید سوچا ہوگا کہ یہ وہ شخص ہے جس نے حکم دیا تھا کہ جب حسین کا لاشا بے گور و کفن پڑا تھا نا تو ان لوگوں کو حکم دیا تھا کہ جاؤ لاشوں کو پامال کرو. کیا گزری ہوگی میرے مولا سے کبھی سوچا ہے آپ نے کہ جب میرا مولا رویا کرتا تھا نا تو کسی نے آ کے پوچھا مولا اتنا رونا آپ کو زہر نہیں دیتے مولا کیوں اتنا روتے کہ تو نے انصاف نہیں کیا. یعقوب کے اتنے ساری اولاد تھے لیکن ایک یوسف آنکھوں سے دور ہوا تھا, مرا نہیں تھا, زندہ تھا. یعقوب علم نبوت سے جانتے تھے کہ یوسف زندہ ہے لیکن اتنے آنسو بہائے کہ یعقوب کی آنکھیں چلی گئی. کہتے میرے 18 یوسف ایک دن میں چلے گئے. کیا حق نہیں ہے کہ میں ان پہ آنسو؟ اور کون سے یوسف؟ عباس جیسا یوسف, اکبر جیسا یوسف, قاسم جیسا یوسف, اور محمد جیسے یوسف. ایک دن میں 18 یوسف چلے گئے. مولا شہادت آپ کی میراث ہے نا؟ کہ ہاں شہادت میراث ہے لیکن میری مائیں بہنیں, میری پھوپھیاں اور نامحرموں کا مجمع ہو, شرابیوں کا دربار ہو اور میری مائیں بہنیں بے رضا ننگے سر وہاں پہ. کہا اے منحال یاد رکھنا شام کا دربار تھا, یزید تخت پہ تھا, اس کے ہاتھ میں چھری تھی, میرے باپ کے لبوں پر چھری چلا رہا تھا, ایک اس کے ہاتھ میں شراب کا جام تھا اور پوچھتا تھا ان عورتوں میں سے زینب کہاں ہے. منحال میں کھڑا ہوا تھا وہاں پہ. یہ وہی میرے عزیزوں جو راہ کوفہ کا جو سفر تھا نا بڑا مشکل تھا. یہ وہی سفر ہے جہاں زینب, اللہ جانے کیا حسرت سے زینب نے حسین کے سر کو دیکھا ہوگا کہ حسین قرآن پڑھنا شروع, وہ حسین جس نے پورے عاشور میں کوئی معجزہ نہیں دکھایا, جب قاسم کی لاشیں کے ٹکڑے ہوئے معجزہ نہیں دکھایا, اکبر پہ جب لاشا گرا نا, جب اکبر گھوڑے سے گرے اس وقت حسین کے آنکھوں سے روشنی چلی گئی تھی, حسین نے معجزہ نہیں دکھایا. لیکن اللہ جانے کوفے میں کیا حال تھا ان بیویوں کا کہ کس حسرت سے زینب نے سر حسین کو دیکھا کہ حسین نے اس وقت قرآن پڑھنا شروع ہوا تاکہ لوگوں کی, ان نامحرموں کی نظریں میری بہنوں پہ نہ پڑے, میرے سر پر آ جائے وہ نظریں. یہ وہی راہ کوفہ ہے کہ سکینہ اتنی پیاسی تھی کہ جب شمر کے پاس جاتی تھی اور کہا اے شمر میں نہیں کہتی کہ تو اپنا پانی مجھے دے, لیکن جب تو نے پانی پی لیا, جب تیرے سپاہیوں نے پانی پی لیا, جب تیرے جانوروں نے پانی پی لیا, تب جو تھوڑا سا پانی بچا ہے نا, اے شمر مجھے پانی دے دے. اس لعین نے پانی کی کوزہ سکینہ کے سامنے پانی بہانا شروع کیا. ہائے حسرت سکینہ, شاید میرا دل کہتا ہے فراق کا رک گیا ہوگا اور کہا ہوگا چچا اب آپ چلے گئے, پانی بھی کوئی دینے والا نہیں ہے. یہ وہی راہ کوفہ ہے کہ جب سکینہ کو اتنی پیاس لگی کہ کہا بھبی اماں کیا کوئی اس کوفہ میں ایسا نہیں جو ہمیں پانی پلائے. ایک بی بی کو ترس آیا, گھر گئی پانی لائی. ایک بار آپ کی کہتی بیٹی پانی پی لے, لیکن ایک زحمت کر دے, ایک کام کر دے, پانی پینے سے پہلے میری چند دعائیں, وہ دعائیں تو کر دے. سکینہ مشکل کشا بھی ہوتی تھی, کہا نہیں پانی نہیں پیوتی, بتاؤ تمہاری کون سی دعا ہے. کہا بس میری پہلی دعا ہے کہ جیسے تم یتیم ہو نا ویسے میرے بچے کبھی یتیم نہ ہو. سکینہ نے ننھے ننھے ہاتھ بلند کیے, کہا پروردگارا تجھے سکینہ کی یتیمی کا واسطہ, اس کے بچوں کو یتیم نہ کرنا. کہا جیسے تم اسیر ہوئی ہو نا ویسے میرے بچے کبھی اسیر نہ ہو. کہا ہے پروردگار تجھے سکینہ کی اسیری کا واسطہ, اس کے بچے کبھی ایسے اسیر نہ ہو. کہا تیری کوئی اور بھی دعا ہے؟ اور کہا ایک اور دعا ہے, دعا کرنا کہ میں مدینے جاؤں اور میں اپنے مولا حسین کی زیارت کر سکوں. بس ایک بار زینب نے مدینے کا نام سنا, برداشت نہ ہوا, مدینہ جا کر کیا کریں گی؟ نہ میرا مولا حسین ہے مدینے میں، میرا مولا عباس ہے مدینے میں، اور ایک میری شہزادی بھی ہے مدینے میں. زینب نے پوچھا کہ شہزادی کا کیا نام ہے؟ کہا دیکھ تمہیں نام محروموں کا مجمع ہے، یہ بازار ہے، یہاں میں اپنی شہزادی کا نام نہیں لے سکتی، لیکن اگر تو جاننا چاہتی ہے میری شہزادی کا نام زینب ہے. کہا اگر تو زینب کو دیکھے گی تو پہچانے گی. کہا کیسے نہیں پہچانو، اتنے سال تک خدمت کیا کرتی تھی. بس ایک بار اب زینب سے نہ رہا گیا، اپنے بالوں کو چہرے سے ہٹایا. ام حبیبہ تو نے نہ پہچانا زینب کو، اور تو حسین کی زیارت کرنا چاہتی ہے نا، دیکھ نیزے پہ وہ سر ہے وہ تیرے حسین کا ہے. کہا بی بی آپ کے سر پر پردہ نہیں، بی بی حسین شہیدوں میں بس ایک سوال ہے، بی بی عباس کہاں تھا؟ Ya Allah, بحق المسلمين جزاك الله. Ya Allah, accept this small violence from us. Ya Allah, جن کی انسانی ثواب کی مجلس ہے، مرحوم عارف معین الدین پروردگار تجھے واسطہ باپ کے درجات بلند فرما، ان کو عالیہ علم میں جگہ عنایت فرما، انہیں قبر میں سے آج حسین نصیب فرما، شفاعت سے حسین نصیب فرما، ہمارے مولا صاحب زمان کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما. ہم سے حسین